Amazing. Okay, so welcome. We might just wait a couple of minutes if anyone else is coming. In the meantime, we'll play a little video for you. You might have seen it before if you joined our mini mock last week. It also might not load, hoping for the best. Great. Let's try the YouTube form. Actually, we might play it at the end because I think I need to re-download it. All right. And I'm just going to ask Gabby or Karim, can you be in charge of letting people in? Thank you. Amazing. All right, let's start. Okay, so welcome to our event this evening. So great to have you all here. I just wanted to start by saying a huge thank you because a lot of you, when you signed up, we love keeping these events free so that all of you can come. But thank you for the donations and we really appreciate them. And one of the campaigns that we have been using them for is giving free mental health sessions to and mental health counselling to high school students in the Philippines, very similar to our Medicare sort of mental health care plan because they don't have that over there. So that's something that we've been doing with your donations and we're super grateful. So thank you so much. Also, just before we begin, we'd like you all to join us in an acknowledgement to country, and particularly significant for us in Australia this week, and remembering the things that happened on the 26th of January in Australia and what that meant to the Aboriginal people of Australia. And so would like to acknowledge that this is their country and that their sovereignty was never ceded, and that we would like to pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging and acknowledge them. And thank you so much for joining us in that and joining us this evening. So tonight we've got a jam-packed open class prepared for you all. If you would like to, we would love to see your faces, so feel free to turn on your cameras. You definitely don't have to, but it will be interactive, so don't be shy and there's nothing to be worried about either. So just before we begin, I think I recognize most of you or your names. I've seen you at different events before, but just if anyone here has not come to a Halad event before, just to give you a little bit of an idea of who we are. So whilst we do a lot of Gamsat things and a lot of events in the Gamsat space, we actually are a not-for-profit that runs health education missions in the Philippines and is focused on making an impact for disadvantaged communities in the Philippines. And we do that through our Gamsat services and the funds we raise there. So thank you so much for coming along. Hopefully you get something out of it, and it's wonderful to know that also Halad and that the young people of the Philippines also get something out of the donations and the contributions that are made through our Gamsat services. And something that's really exciting was that just from our Gamsat courses alone, we were able to donate over $20,000 to the students in our area in the Philippines, Bukidnon, and bring them health education too. And so I thought that at this point I would introduce the tutors who will be with you tonight. So my name is Sarah. I'm a 4th year med student at Monash and I run the Gamsat services here at Halad. We also have Gabby with us. And Gabby is a section 1 and 2 tutor. Tonight she'll be running you through some section 1 content. And Gabby is our interior designer. And what was it, yesterday or today? She bought a lovely new collection for her new student apartment. She's an MD2 this year. This lovely fat lady, isn't she gorgeous? With her curves and her breasts. We love that.
There she is.
Amazing. 11 out of 10 choice there. And Karim over here, big news from Karim. Apparently today was his personal best of overhead pressing 40 kilograms at the gym. So there's Karim's gym update. He's also our section 3 head and tutor, and he will run you through section 3 tonight. Amazing. So that is our team. just a little bit about what we do. We try and provide whatever Gamsat services we believe will be most helpful for all of you. And the reason why this is so important is because we know what it's like and we've been there and we want you to succeed. And that's literally it. And we are so grateful for all of you coming along. Feel free to ask questions, feel free to contribute. We're here to help you. And it's so much more than just doing well at the Gamsat. We really want you to become fantastic doctors or dentists or whatever medical professional you would like to be. And that's why we're here. And I really love this. Eliza put this into the slides for me, but it was some feedback from one of my students a while ago, and now she's starting med. I think it's this week or next week, and that's so exciting to see. So that is a whole purpose here at Halad in terms of our Gamsat services. So just a little bit about how the class will run tonight. We will have one of each section. We'll do sort of a mini class of how we tend to run our classes at Halad, and they'll run for about 40 minutes each. Feel free to ask questions in the chat or to just unmute your microphone and shout out, and we'll be happy to help out. And so on that note, I would love to hand it over to Gabby now and get us started. While she sets that up, I'm just going to put up a really quick poll. If everyone could fill this out and just let us know if you've been to one of our events before and if you've sat the Gamsat before, particularly if you've sat it before, this will help us to sort of know the things that we tell you during the class tonight. Fabulous. All right, fantastic. Okay, and so just for everyone, we've got about a half-half split. Welcome to everyone who's new to our Halad events. I hope that you enjoy it, and welcome back to the 59% of you who've come along before. And we've got 62% who have not sat the Gamsat before. So we'll keep that in mind and make sure that you do ask questions if you're confused about anything along the way. And on that note, hand it over to Gabby.
Thank you, Sarah. So hello everyone, you heard about me before. I'm Gabby and I'll be the Section 1 tutor for tonight. So we'll jump straight in, but I wanted to start with just letting you all know what our philosophy is for teaching Section 1 at Halad. So basically we're all about really focusing on improving skills and techniques rather than memorizing facts and memorizing different text types and things like that. It's all focused on skill-based. And all of our class activities include practice questions, text analysis, and test-taking strategies, and really focusing on, building on those skills and strategies. And then we consolidate your learning through homework activities as well as in-class quizzes. And there's a large focus on reflective practice. This is throughout the entire course, including Section 2 and 3. But in Section 1, we really do focus on reflecting on the questions that you do and the skills that you've learned to ensure that you're really focusing all of your energy into the right places, making sure you're really improving on your weaknesses and making sure that your study is effective. And we also have a large focus on personalized feedback. So we give this to you within the class setting, as well as maybe after class through email and even through check-in sessions via Zoom throughout the course. So that's just a little bit about us, but each session in itself is usually structured in this way. So you learn a skill, which is the content or the theory, and then you practice the skill, usually through some sort of text analysis, and then you apply the skill, usually with a Gamsat style question. And that's exactly what we are going to do today. So strap in for this. So the first skill we are going to learn is breaking down philosophy. But before we learn the content, I'd like to highlight why it is important. So lots of students can sort of get confused about why Section 1 is even in the Gamsat. They're like, oh, poems aren't important for being a doctor. I don't need to know this, that sort of stuff. But in reality, the themes and topics that come up in Section 1 are really important for being a doctor and healthcare professional. So philosophical concepts in particular, they battle the big questions in life, things like existence, death, the mind, ethics, and morals, all very important for medicine. And these topics not only relate to you, but your future patients as well. So you need to be able to be comfortable in discussing these topics and listening to other people's opinions on these topics, whether or not they have the same opinion as you as well. So it's really important to be able to understand these concepts and be comfortable with them. There was quite a few of these philosophical concepts that I wasn't necessarily comfortable with when I was sitting the Gamsat. And then over the past year or so, I've really learned to be more comfortable in discussing them. And it's helped me when reading philosophical texts as well. So the sooner you can do that, the better. So getting to the content, when you get a philosophical piece in the Gamsat, the first thing, obviously, that you do is read the text. But you don't just want to read the text. You want to make sure that you're actively reading the text to make sure that you're reading it quick enough, but also making sure that you're understanding it so that then you don't have to go back and read it again, because that'll take too much time and you just don't have the time in the exam. And you also want to make sure you're staying engaged, but really not getting bogged down in all the flowers that exist in philosophy. So there's often lots of tricky words and tricky concepts, and you want to make sure you're not getting stuck in that and just focusing on the big picture rather than the all of the tricky words and things like that. Focus on the key ideas and the big picture. Okay, and then once you've read that text, you want to analyze it. So before you answer the question, make sure you pause and spend time analyzing it to ensure that you understand the text completely. And ask yourself questions to help guide your understanding. So these are the questions that we suggest you ask yourself. You might want to tailor these specifically to your style of learning, as well as your style of, once you get it practice a few times, you might be able to tweak it a little bit to make sure it's personalized to you. But something that I think works for most students is asking yourself, number one, what are the key ideas in this text? Number two, what is the main message? So the main take home message that the author is trying to give you, and what does it say about being human? Three, try to express it in your own words. Obviously, you don't have time to write this down in the Gamsat, but if you can think about it in your head, how you would be able to explain this concept to a family member or a friend, then it means that you're pretty well on your way to understanding the text completely. And then the fourth one is imagine the text is being written about you. Lots of people might think this is a bit egocentric. However, if you imagine that these concepts are written about you and how these apply to your life and what they look like in action, you're more likely to be able to understand it a little bit more and apply that knowledge to answering the questions. So give that a crack. So we'll jump to the first activity. You should have all of the links to get you up to the question page. And this is just unit 1. The chat box, oh yeah, that's all been sorted. Perfect. Okay, so I'll give you 5 minutes. Your job is to read the text. As I said before, make sure you stay engaged and use those active reading techniques. Don't get bogged down in the tricky words or the flowers. Just really focus on the key ideas. And then analyze the text using the skills we just spoke about. So ask yourself the following questions. What are the key ideas? What is the purpose of the text? And what are the different opinions presented? Okay, I'll get a timer ready. Your time starts now. Okay, there's just 1 minute to go. Make sure you answer those last three things. So what are the key ideas? What is the purpose? And what different opinions are being presented? Okay, that is time. Hopefully you had enough time to read it completely and analyze it, but we'll go through it now anyway. So basically, the whole purpose of this text was to discuss different people's opinions on authenticity. So it's a really confusingly worded text, I think. And if you just read it once and sort of half read it and don't really take it all in, you'll get nothing out of it because they introduce lots of different characters and lots of different characters' opinions. But basically, the whole idea is just discussing this thing, authenticity, and bringing different people's opinions in about it. And each one of those opinions is quite philosophical as well, and maybe a little bit abstract to your usual way of thinking and your usual things that you read as well. So it can be quite hard to interpret. But what I would do if I was a student and this came up in the Gamsat is I would write down each key character because there aren't too many characters. There's like 4 main characters. So it's reasonable to write it all down, write their names down and their main opinion. And this will help you really ensure that you get the whole text summarized in your mind, but also so that you understand the different opinions that are included in the text. And most likely there will be a question which is asking you to compare the different people's opinions as well. So you'll already be one step ahead. So what I have written down is Lash, this character. He's comparing narcissism with authenticity. So this straight away gives you an idea on his opinion of authenticity if he's thinking that narcissism is the exact same. The second person, Bloom, he describes authenticity as being self-centered. So having this trait of self-centeredness, again, gives you a pretty good indication of what his opinion might be. And Belle, this character really talks about the impact of authenticity and modern day authenticity on economic viability. Again, it gives an indication of what Belle's priorities might be compared to Lash and Bloom's, who seem to be more similar. And then Feldman, this last person, they believe that authenticity may have a corrupting influence on the external social realm. This may seem confusing, but he's more talking about the external environment and how that impacts authenticity and vice versa. So see how I've written down just a few lines, but it pretty much summarizes the entire text. Again, on Gamsat Day, you might not have the time to write all of that, but if you can write down 1 or 2 words on your scrap piece of paper, it'll really be a good sort of signposting for you to come back to later on when you're answering the questions. Okay, so there are 3 Gamsat style questions attached to this unit on the student worksheet that you've been given. I want you to have a crack at those, but for homework, because we don't quite have time to do those today. We're going to do a different text with different Gamsat style questions, but I think they're really great questions and they will really test your understanding of the text. So have a crack. You will get sent explanations later on. And if at any point you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email and I can further explain those for you. But for now, we'll move on to using the skill. And this is how we are going to kill the Gamsat. A bit of a plug to our ebook there. So what we're going to do in breakout rooms, we are going to read the new text, analyze the text using those skills we've just learnt, and answer the Gamsat style questions as a team. And then we'll come back to the main room for the answers and explanations. So make sure you have that worksheet up with the student worksheet up with the questions and the texts, so you can use that in your breakout room because you won't be able to see my screen. And in every breakout room, there will be 1 tutor. So you'll either have Sarah, Karim, or I, just to help facilitate the discussion as well. So Sarah will get those oh no, do you want me to get, no, Sarah's getting them. Sarah's getting them sorted. But while she is, I'll just remind you, when you're in your breakout rooms, it really is about helping each other and really acting as a team to answer these Gamsat style questions. Because more often than not, you learn more from your peers than you would on your own. So make sure you really work collaboratively and turn your camera on so people can see you and you can engage more actively. And the more you put in, the more you'll get out. So
Amazing. All right, we're ready to go. I'm just going to. Some of the rooms have more than others. So. Okay.
Oh yes, I was like, is this going to be someone random? That's not. Okay, it's just us. Oh.
Hello.
Oh my god, that makes me laugh so much.
Oh, that's funny.
just get my screen up ready. Okay, so hopefully there was some good discussions going on in those rooms. And remember, the key point of that exercise wasn't to, compare yourself to your peers and see, okay, they got it right, I got it wrong. Nothing like that. It was really about learning from each other and seeing different people's approaches to things as well. Because again, everyone's different in their way of learning and you can learn so much from your peers. So make sure you really embrace yourself in the rest of the breakout room activities for today. Well, okay, so what we're going to do now, you all should have had the opportunity to answer those questions, and you might have even gone through a few answers together, but I'm going to put up a poll. There we go. You should see a poll for the section 1 questions and pop in your answer for every question. Even if you haven't finished, just click a random option because you have to click all 4 options before pressing submit. So we can get a bit of an idea about which questions were harder and which questions were easier to see which ones to go through. Okay, still need a few more people to pop their responses in. Okay, I might just stop it there. There's still a couple to go, but for the sake of time. So I'll share the results now. Okay, so question 1, you will get all of these answers and explanations as well after class. So don't stress if we don't go through everything and if you want more of an explanation. But it looks like most of you got question 1 correct, which was C. So I won't go through that one, but if you're confused, make sure you think about the entire purpose of the text, as well as the little section towards the end of the text as well. That will give you more of an indication as to why C is the correct answer there. And D, this was more of a close one, so I'll discuss this one. So as I was saying to the students in my breakout room, in order to really get this question right, you need to not only have a look at what the mother's actions were in the text, but also try to infer what her feelings are based on the tone of what she's saying, as well as the tone of the text in general, and the whole purpose of the text. So you're not only picking up on those things that we said prior to attempting the text, so looking at those key ideas, but you're also looking at the purpose. And basically, the whole point of this text, as I was saying to my breakout room, is that her children are yearning to learn from their mother. They want to know about these important things in life, as said in the title. But the mother is being very matter of fact, giving the children answers to whatever they want, talking about death, sex, marriage, very important, mature concepts, but can't give them what they want. The children are yet to be satisfied. And that's because the mother can't teach the children these important things in life, because these aren't teachable. These aren't things that you can read in a textbook or learn from someone else. The children really need to live their own life and learn them along the way. And so that not only gives you an indication, that the mother is seasoned in life, not because she's older than the kids, but because she knows those important things in life. She's able to learn them along the way. And she's also realistic as well, because as I said before, she's being very matter of fact, giving the children what they want, answering those really hard questions that perhaps other parents wouldn't. Sometimes parents sugarcoat things and wouldn't necessarily answer questions about death to children. So that's why D is the correct answer. A, frustrated and resolute. The mother doesn't seem necessarily frustrated. She might be a little bit irritated at points throughout the text, but I wouldn't say frustrated is a correct interpretation of her emotion. And she's definitely not resolute. She's engaged with her children and answering them. Apologetic and self-indulgent. Although she does apologize for some things, she's not really apologetic in the way that she's telling her children about these big concepts. She's letting them know because she's trying to prepare them for life. And there's no indication that she's self-indulgent in the text, as well as awe-inspiring. There's not really any indication of that within this text. So therefore, D is the most correct answer. Okay, what others? Question 3, most of you got that one right, which is great, so I won't go through that. And B, a lot of you got that one right as well. So the key thing with B, it might seem like a bit of a tricky question to know how old the children are, because it doesn't give you any age at all. But think about what the mother is saying to the children and how she is saying it. And that gives you more of an indication of how old they are. So if they were too young to attend school, then perhaps she wouldn't tell them about things such as death, marriage, and sex. But because she is, maybe they're a little bit older. So youth or young adults is a better estimation of how old the children might be. And of course, they're not parents themselves, because they'll probably know these things. And they're not terminally ill, because there's no indication of that within the text. Okay, so yep, as Sarah said in the chat, if you have any questions about this at all, feel free to send me any emails and questions after the class today. But what I want you to do now is just spend 1 minute reflecting on the section 1 content today. So everything from unit 1 and unit 2, think about what were you good at? What were some of your weaknesses, or what did you struggle with, and how will you improve? So I'll just give you 1 minute to reflect on that. Okay, and while you're doing that, I might just answer Navneet's question. It might be I think I'll have time for that. So basically, the quote that Navneet has pulled from the text, yeah, this might not be a realistic story. It might be a made up story. That's fine. But it's really asking about the mother's nature as a whole. So you can't just look at one thing in the text to interpret what the mother, how to describe the mother. You need to look at her actions throughout the entire text. And due to the fact that she's answering her children's questions, she's telling them the truth. She's not sugarcoating anything. She's not lying about anything. She's telling them about, as I said, all of those really sort of mature concepts. She's realistic. She's trying to prepare her kids for life by giving them this information. So, yep, she might tell them a story, but, you know, you tell kids stories. That's fine. That's just part of being being kids, you know, you tell them stories. But in general, the mother is realistic in the way that she parents her children by telling them about those real big life problems, those big life questions, and answering them to her kids. So hopefully that answers your question, Navneet. And if you struggled with that a little bit, as I said before, we were going to learn how to kill the Gamsat. And the reason why I said it is because this is our ebook, How to Get Away with Murder. No, How to Get Away with Killing the Gamsat. So make sure you check this out. There's lots of section 1 tips, tricks, and content, but also some practice questions that you can go through with full explanations as well. So make sure you check that out. And yep, as Sarah said, feel free to email me if you have any further questions. I'm more than happy to respond. Okay. Section 2.
All right, fabulous. Thank you so much, Gabby. Why is my screen not moving? Okay. All right, so welcome to the best section of the Gamsat, in my opinion. Not biased at all, but I will try and give you as much time to work on things as possible. But I know that quite a few of you, it's actually your first time sitting the Gamsat, and some of you tonight, this is your first time even attempting Gamsat questions. So welcome, congratulations, very exciting journey you've just embarked on. So I'll try and give you some context as to what this task is actually all about as we go along. And as always, I'll have the chat up, so feel free to fire questions. I'll try my best to get through them. I find that section 2, we do tend to get a lot of questions, so you're more than welcome to send them afterwards as well, and I'll get back to you. So just really quickly, a little bit about section 2, and then I'll tell you a bit about some of the key skills that are really helpful for you to build in order to nail your section 2 responses. So section 2 is a little bit different to the other sections in that there is no STEM as a stimulus, and there won't be any multi-choice questions. Instead, you'll have to write a written response, and this section is actually called the written communication section. In short, what you're required to do is write a written response to a prompt. It's usually 4 to 5 quotes, and you have to find an overall theme of those quotes, and then give your opinion on those quotes in the form of a written response. The most common response that students write will be a standard essay, but you can write whatever you like. So we'll go over that a little bit more as we go. And if you're a little vague on some of these things, we can give you some resources at the end as well to help you know some things you can look into to help you improve how you're writing and get a better idea of what they're actually looking for in this section. A great place to start is that ebook that Gabby just mentioned. We break it down for you as well in terms of what you need to do for section 2, but you can definitely try out today's activities even if you're not really sure exactly what you need to do, because it can be a starting point for you. So in terms of how we like to teach section 2, it's really important that you have a good idea of how to come up with your own concepts and ideas and examples. So we spend a lot of time focusing on that and generating your own ideas and opinions and making sure you can express those. Another really important thing is being able to dissect the prompt, because if you look at the prompt and you don't really know what to do with it, then that's a major pitfall of being able to complete the section. And it's really unfortunate when we see students write something amazing, but it doesn't actually address the theme or the topic. So we're going to look at that a little bit today. Also, once you know what the actual topic is that you're supposed to be writing on, building a contention and showing what you think about it, and then turning that actually into an essay through planning and putting your ideas together. And then from that, we tweak structure and explore different ways for you to structure your essays and actually write something. My biggest tip with section 2 is just to write and practice writing and practice coming up with ideas, even if you feel like they're not that great, and just start getting feedback and editing it for yourself. And this is something that I just really wanted to emphasize, is that what you have to say is so much more important than how you actually say it. So if you feel like your English is inadequate, or you're not that eloquent, or maybe you feel like you don't write super sophisticated essays, that's totally fine. I just want to hear your ideas about the topic. So hopefully that's something that you can get out of today. So what I've done is organized a prompt for you all. So on the worksheet that you've all got, there'll be a prompt that I'm using as a practice example, and then there's a prompt that you will all use in your discussions in the class today. So there should be 2 prompts on there, and I'll also have them up on the screen at certain points. We'll dissect the prompt, have a go at building a contention yourselves, have a go at coming up with an idea or 2, and then later, we probably won't get time in this class, but later have an opportunity to write to it, and I'll tell you how you can have opportunities to also share what you've written and get some feedback on that. So first step is prompt dissection. If you've never seen a Gamsat prompt before, in that sheet, you can grab that up now and have a look at the example one, and I'll show you that on my screen in a second as well. So your main task when you get the prompt is to work out what the common theme is. What happens is that you get given a group of quotes, and sometimes it's super obvious what all the quotes are about, and sometimes you have to dig a little bit and work out what the quotes are. So you might need to spend 2, 3, 5 seconds glancing at the prompt. Yep, I've got it, I'm ready to go. Other times you might need to put a good minute's work into it to work out the prompt, and it's definitely worth putting in that time. I've got 3 steps here for you to try. The first step is to look at each quote and separately analyze it by asking yourself what it's about, what the main idea is. Once you've done that, asking yourself what is the similarity between all of these, and then identifying that and tying it together to say, yep, this is the theme of the prompt. I know that sounds really simple. It is, but it's so easily missed. And then unfortunately, a lot of people accidentally write on the wrong theme or miss a key component of it. So here's the example that I've got for you all. I'll give you about 30 seconds to just read each of the quotes on there, so that I'm not just talking at you and you have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay, fabulous. It will be, the quotes are on this next slide as well if you didn't quite get time to finish them. So this is something I typically do in my head. You definitely don't need to draw out a table or anything like that. I just wanted to make it really clear for you to see. So what I've done is sort of put next to each prompt what I think it's roughly about. So I felt like the first prompt was really about that friendship. It's more important that someone's truly there for you and understands you and shows that to you than how long you've known them for. The second quote I felt was about how friendship is equivalent, or true friendship is equivalent to family. And that for me, that quote of like family is what you make it is really what this is all about. And that people who are that close to you become who your family actually are, and what that definition is to you. The next one is all about how different people bring a different energy or vibe and can sort of uplift you, and that everyone is unique and brings that unique energy. And that if you incorporate good, uplifting, wholesome people into your life, you also incorporate that energy into your life, and that everyone has something different and unique to bring. The next quote, I think some of you might have heard this one before from on Harry Potter, but is basically about how friends, sometimes it's harder to stand up to them because you've got more to lose than you have when you stand up to your enemies. And I think that's a really important point, is that we really care what our friends think of us and of our opinions and of the things that we stand for. And then the last quote being that we would rather have friends who actually tell us and pull us up on things and disagree with us and have our own opinions and are actually honest and willing to be themselves, rather than just blindly following us because they don't want to offend us. So I sort of thought about each of these things when I looked at the quotes. What you'll notice is that the more time you spend looking at prompts for section 2, the quicker this will become. And you'll look at quotes and go, this idea, I totally get what that quote means. I resonate with that, etc. So don't freak out if you didn't think these things about the quotes. Also, don't freak out if you thought slightly different things. We're all different. And that's the whole point of this task, is to show your differences and how you think. And so I came up with an overall theme across all of these ideas, which was friendship. And that friendship, and not only friendship, but these quotes all discuss what friendship actually is and what it means to people. So I hope that you've noticed that I didn't just say it's about friendship. I also noticed that each quote had a little bit of a discussion about what friendship really means and is. And that's important to be able to identify as well. So I'm going to pass it over to you all now. While I do that, I will give you about 5 minutes to give them a read and do what I just did. And I'm going to pull up a poll EV for you all so that you can anonymously write what you think the theme is, so that you don't have to feel embarrassed if you put something in the chat that you think sounds silly. So I'm going to stop screen sharing so that I can set up the poll EV. But anyone who just joined, I'll put a link in the chat with these prompts on there for you. Amazing. I literally have zero poker face. I'm sitting here smiling as all of these come in. This is so great, guys. I'm so happy. I'm so impressed. So emotional pain. Sorry, I don't know why. Maybe I'll try full screen. That's a bit better. Yeah. Pain, how it affects people. We all feel emotion. Dealing with pain or suppressing it. Do not suffer in silence. Pain and how it affects people. Painful emotions are a powerful trigger for growth. Pain is an effective tool for growth. You're stronger than those who hurt you. Pain is growth, trauma, the forms it can come in, the way it can impact us. This is amazing, guys. Often the best growth and development is made as a result of pain. The power of pain to inform us. Lessons can be painful. Amazing. The hurt it brings and how we can learn from it. Incredible. All right, I'm going to switch back over. Leave up the poll EV. We'll do another one in a minute. Why did it just screen share back to that? This one. There we go. Can you all see the slideshow again? Fabulous. All right. Fantastic. So you all nailed it. I know that that was a tricky one. I did it deliberately because sometimes it's really easy. Sometimes it will be, you see the word love in all of them. Ta-da, it's love. Fantastic. If it's that, you don't have to spend more time than necessary. This is specifically helpful for when you look at it and you're like, oh, not sure. So if you just put pain, that's fantastic. Great start. Push yourself a little bit further to realize some of those things that came up in there, like dealing with emotions, dealing with trauma, things like that, because this is quite clear in all of these quotes when you dig a little bit deeper. In terms of if you just discuss pain, make sure that you bring in that extra step. And likewise, if you discuss emotions, make sure that you focus on sort of pain and like difficult emotions, because that's in these quotes, rather than if you were to go happiness and joy, and then that's not quite what the quotes are about anymore. Another thing that's really great is what we're about to do is the next step, which is building a contention. And a lot of you wrote elements that you can now use in your next contention. So helping you to, or coming up with the theme actually helps you to build your contention as well. So I'm going to move on to that. If anyone has any questions about the theme, feel free to put it in the chat. All right, so step 2, we're going to have a go at building a contention. So basically, I know that contention can feel like a bit of a scary word, or I know sometimes people get a mental block and go, oh my goodness, I don't know how to come up with this really fancy contentional line. Literally all the contention is, what do you think about the theme? That's it. That's all I want to know. I don't need anything fancy or special. So my note on that is, please do not write an essay just rewording the theme and going, hello, here's my essay on pain. That's not a contention. That's just telling me what the theme is. And it's so easy to do. So please take an extra step and say, this is what I think about pain, or what I think about pain and suppressing emotions. Just push it so that you actually say what you think, rather than falling in that trap of going, here's the quote, here's the theme, I wrote on it. And that's something that's also really easy to do, is accidentally writing an essay listing all of the quotes and going, this quote is about this quote is about that, whether you do it directly or accidentally do it indirectly. So coming up with your own contention will stop you from accidentally doing that. And so instead, I want you to have a say about the theme, and I want to know what that is, rather than just telling me what the quotes are already saying. So you definitely can incorporate the quotes, just don't rely on them to become your contention. So again, I've got an example for you. Firstly, I'll give you a couple of steps. So if you're stuck on coming up with a contention, some things that might be helpful are asking yourself some questions. So I've already mentioned this one, what do I think about this theme? Another one that might be good is how does it make me feel? And another one that I do find helpful is, what aspects of the theme are particularly important to me? And that one can be good because then it can help you come up with some examples too if you're stuck, and can help you come up with some ideas a little bit later on in your piece. After that, write a contention, and please state your contention towards the start of your piece, regardless of the style you're writing. The one exception might be a creative piece, but even then it might be helpful for you to state it near the start in a more creative way. If you have questions about writing creative pieces, please feel free to email me, because we won't have a lot of time to cover that today. In terms of Oh, sorry, we just have a question to go back to the last slide. I'll go back to it in a second for you. The last thing is if you decide to go a little bit left of center with your contention, completely fine. Just please make sure that you show that you understood what the theme is. So let's say that I decided with my friendship theme to go a little bit left of center and talk about relationships and how friendships can turn into romantic relationships. I really need to show that I still understand it was about friendship and that that's where I wanted to take it. So just be careful with that. Just going to go back super quickly. The question was, what was the point on the last slide, the tip that you should do? So the tip is basically, please say what you want to say about the theme rather than just saying what the quotes are saying. And so that really just leans into making sure that you put forward a contention. Hope that that made sense. All right, so I've done it with the example that I gave you all about friendship. And basically, I like to set it up with answering each of those questions. You might find something slightly different works for you. But basically, I thought, well, what do I think about the theme? And I thought, well, friendship is a really important part of life, but sometimes friendships can become toxic if people don't respect each other's boundaries or needs. And then I thought about, well, how does that make me feel? And it makes me really frustrated that sometimes friendships are misunderstood and are taken advantage of. And then I thought a little bit about what parts of this theme are important to me. And I thought, well, that friendship is super important, but it's not a free for all. And some of the quotes actually touch on this. So maybe in my piece, I'll use some of those quotes, such as the quote about people proving that they're there for you and that that's a good example of friendship. And that also when there are friends who change as you change or just comply to what you want, then that's probably a sign of more toxicity. And I thought those were some good or some really particularly important parts of the quotes to me. And I might use those a little bit later. And so with this sort of thought process, I came up with my own contention, which is that friendship is a core component of being human or the human experience, but it is quite vulnerable to toxicity and manipulation if we don't have boundaries in our close relationships. So basically, that's going to be my contention that I put into the start of my piece, and I'll use that to then leverage my ideas as I go through the piece. So hopefully that makes sense. Even if you're a little bit confused or unsure, give it a try. We're going to do the same thing with the poll EV. There's just a reminder of what the theme was. And one quick thing, I think this is supposed to say contention building, sorry, but just a note that I didn't just rewrite what the theme was as my contention, and I didn't just rewrite one of the quotes. So I think I mentioned that before, just wanted to make that really clear. And also that there's no one right contention. So if you were thinking that you would have written something totally different, that's great, because I don't want two people writing necessarily the exact same thing. I want it to be what you're thinking. So hopefully it just gave you a good example rather than made you feel like, oh no, I didn't write that, because that's kind of the point. So now it's your turn. I'm going to hand it back over to you guys. When you've come up with a contention, I'll give you about 5 minutes, write it into the poll EV. Again, it's anonymous, just give it a go. I'm not going to judge what you wrote, and I love to see your answers. So I'll give you a few minutes and then we'll have a bit of a chat about what you've come up with. Okay, I know that some of you might still be going, and that's totally fine. Would just like to say, Gabby and I both sitting here smiling. We both tutor section 2, and I was like, look at us smiling like idiots, because seeing these responses is just amazing. You're all nailing it and very, very impressed. And the reason why I think is that it's really easy to write something and accidentally forget to come up with a contention, but these are so great. And if you put this in as your contention and then you springboarded off of this for your ideas, you've been nailing it. This is exactly what you need to do for this task. So let's just go over a couple of them, and you can all sort of see what each other wrote. So this one, the most valuable aspect of one's person is generally a result of their trauma rather than their successes. Amazing. Pain is unavoidable in life. Embrace it and learn from it. Oh, it scrolled. Yep. Rather than letting it consume you. While there are various ways that people engage in. Pain is a multifaceted emotion refracting in different directions, triggering different outcomes. Dealing with pain constructively involves channeling one's pain to trigger growth and embrace healing and forgiveness. I love this as well, because this literally shows also the person's solution, and they could definitely have a paragraph where they talk about the problem and then a paragraph where they talk about the solution, which is a really common tactic, and they've set themselves up for the essay. Amazing. Mental resilience is built through hardship. Fantastic. Avoidance of pain robs us of the richness of the human experience. That's so beautiful and so true. These are so great, guys. I also hope that you can see that there's quite a varied response to the prompt, despite you all getting the same prompt. And I know that I've said that about 3 times now, but just want you to be really clear that if you read something from the same prompt from someone else, it doesn't mean you've done it wrong. So embrace people's ideas, but also be confident in your own and trust in the process and in coming up with your own opinions and really refining those. Amazing. Heavy emotional pain can arise in people belonging to historically discriminated groups, resulting from intergenerational trauma and lifelong structural disadvantage. This pain is provided a platform of expression through public movements of resistance. That's incredible. I really love this one, because like I would be so excited to read about this person, what they understand about intergenerational trauma and being under whatever oppression or marginalization they might have experienced. And so I hope also you see that a lot of these topics enable you to bring to the table whatever you have experienced or seen in your own life. And you can use either personal examples or you can use external examples, but bring the things that you know rather than pretending to know something else, because what you know definitely is enough. And they will give you topics that you can all relate to in your own ways. So on that note, the last thing that we're going to do is a little bit of an activity leaning on that. So I'm just going to change my screen share once more. And that's developing an idea based on that contention that you just built. And most of you already have ideas sitting there from those contentions that you just wrote, which is fantastic. So it will look different for everyone how you develop ideas. So I'm not going to tell you a particular way. I went to insert an image here and then realized it was too big. So I'll show you the image instead. But you can have a mind map, you can have a table, you can use categories, you can make lists, whatever works for you. I'm going to show you an example of categories in the image that I show you. And what I would just note is that you might already have some ideas that you want to write about, and that just makes it a quicker process. So you don't have to follow a hard and fast process every time, or be like, oh, Sarah told me I have to do this step. If you've got ideas and they're good ideas, go with it. So hopefully I did not put it in the next slide, so I will just have to swap my screen share. All right. And I will send out this image for you all after the event. So don't stress about trying to write it down or anything. So sometimes it can be helpful to use categories and ask yourself which categories might apply to this prompt. So, and obviously you're not going to use all of them, but it can help if you're feeling a little bit stuck coming up with ideas. So this was why I wanted to show you all this one today, is if you're a little bit stuck, you can pick a few. So this topic that you guys are doing on pain and dealing with emotions, some good ones here might be emotional, how the theme is emotionally connected. It might be human nature ones, maybe some health related things, and you can start to think about what ideas you might have around those. So that just might be helpful for you if you're feeling a little bit stuck with coming up with ideas relating to the prompt. I'm just going to check. No worries. All right. And like I mentioned, if you didn't get enough time to read all of that, I will send that out afterwards, so don't stress. Okay, so when you've come up with an idea and you've got your contention and you're good to go, sometimes people's ideas get a little bit scattered with how they put them together. So you definitely don't have to do all these bits. It's up to you how you want to put your ideas forward, but I would highly recommend making sure you say, this is my idea, nice and clearly in the paragraph, that you give some sort of example or show some relevance globally or in society or in your personal life, and that you explain why your example is important or the impact that it has and how that links back to your contention. Doesn't matter exactly how you do it, but those tend to be the things that we look for. And so this was my example of using an emotional approach or the emotional category with my friendship contention about it being a core component of being human, but that sometimes it can be really toxic. And I thought, you know what, one of my ideas is that I think it is a core component to the human experience because it's central to our emotional development. And it helps us to notice when we have unhelpful traits in ourselves, and also helps us to see unhelpful traits in others, as well as helpful traits. And I thought about a personal example of how I've had a particular toxic relationship, which was really difficult, but it also refined me and helped me to grow personally and to know what kinds of boundaries to make for myself. And so then sort of would want to talk about how it's really common to see toxicity in relationships, especially earlier in life when we don't really know ourselves as well. But that helps us to understand what's healthy and what isn't. And then it's really important that I link this back to my overall contention of how, even though toxic friendships are common and that they can be that even though they can be common, they can also be really beneficial, and we need to learn how to recognize when something's toxic so that we can alter the course in our own life and change and let it affect us positively. So that was my little, okay, here's an idea. And essentially this could create a paragraph for me that then I could springboard off of. And then it would probably make sense for my essay to then flow on to how this would, how it would be helpful to create boundaries and help me grow emotionally to develop healthier relationships. So if you set up your essay well, you might actually be able to then know how to follow it on. And I was thinking that after today's session, I might write a little sample essay on this one for you all and send that out so that you can see an idea of how I'd actually bring this all together. All right, so now it's your turn. What I'm going to get you to do is I will activate the Poly V again so that you can put in an idea or two, but I'm going to send you to breakout rooms for about 5 minutes so that you can chat about any ideas or get a little bit of feedback as well on that. So the Poly V will be running in the background still. You just won't see it on the screen share. Hopefully everyone's not feeling too tired because you will need your energy for section 3. We'll just wait a couple seconds for everyone to get back. Awesome. All right, here they come. Perfect. Okay, welcome back, everyone. And I know that a lot of you have questions. And so please send me an email, send me a message. I'm more than happy to answer them all for you because I know that section 2 can get quite curly and confusing about little things sometimes, so that's so fine. I just wanted to finish up reading a couple of your ideas because I love them and you've all done so well. So this one about discuss how the debate over January 26 reveals the emotional pain experienced by Indigenous Australians, link it to the history of colonisation, the emotional strife or weight of this history that is unique to the experiences of Indigenous communities. Absolutely love this. I think this is so relevant currently, and it's so relevant to this theme, and it is a little bit left of center. And we had this discussion in one of the breakout rooms about this particular topic of, if you feel like your example is a little bit to the side, then just make sure you link it back to your contention and let that contention be the anchor. And maybe this person's contention was that emotional pain supersedes generations or whatever it might be, and then just link that back at the end and you're good. And Gabby's giving it massive claps because this is something Gabby is particularly passionate about, so thumbs up, this is awesome. I might just randomly pick one more. Okay. Pain is inevitable. It is part of growing up. However, not everyone are emotionally mature to handle pain. This can sometimes fall into mental health problems. Absolutely love this. And I think this was a discussion I had in one of the other breakout rooms was, can I bring in mental health into this topic? And I'm just going to broaden that to, can I bring in anything into this topic? And you can, if as long as you can link it in and it doesn't seem like a super random stringent link. Like if you start bringing in race car driving and I'm a little bit confused about why you brought that in, probably not, but absolutely that's appropriate to bring in mental health, even if you didn't see mental health actually written in any of the quotes. So you would just need to again show how pain is linked to mental health and you're good to go. And this opens up so much opportunity to talk about mental health, mental illness, how it's dealt with in society, so many ideas around that, how it's dealt with politically. You could take it almost anywhere that you felt comfortable. So I hope that that gave you a bit of an idea of how you can use the prompt to show what you know and to show what you love and what you're passionate about, rather than feeling threatened or confused or tied down by the prompt itself. My main takeaway tip for you all is please don't ignore the prompt and please don't ignore what you're supposed to do with it, and you'll be fine because you've all done excellently. So I'm not worried about you knowing what to do. Just don't freak out when you see that prompt and you should be okay. Just to leave you with something to do, once you've got your ideas, how do you actually write? Just give it a go. It doesn't have to be perfect. You have to start somewhere. Some of you, this might be your first time. Have a bit of a play around with structure, style, different kinds of examples, different kinds of language. Ask people questions, ask yourself questions, ask for feedback from others. My recommendation is have a go writing this from this prompt and the ideas you've come up with tonight, and maybe message someone from the breakout room that you were in and ask them if they'd like to swap essays. You can even make a Google Doc right now and send each other the link and you can read them later. That is one of the best things you can do, is have a look at what each other have written. So that is my recommendation, is to have a go writing what you've done tonight, and then you can swap contact details with someone and share them, or make a little study group. And so same deal, spend some time reflecting after this of what you found you were pretty good at, what you found that you struggled with, and those things would be the things I would encourage you to focus on going forwards. And just one more thing, if you would like an essay that you've written, if you would like us to mark it for you, then go to this link and we can mark it for you. And also, if you've signed up for our Section 2 classes, we'll go over this over and over again, and you'll get an opportunity to swap and share your essays and get feedback on those too. So I'm going to hand it over to Karim now for Section 3, and totally shift gears once again. And so, yeah, thank you so much for being interactive and having a go at Section 2. And I'll pass it over.
Okay, let's get started. I'm sure you guys are very keen to get straight into Section 3 for the last half hour or so. Just a little bit of introduction about me. My name's Karim. I'm a second year medical student at Melbourne Uni. And I'm also the Section 3 lead and tutor at Halad to Health. So let me share my screen. Okay. You guys see that? All good, beautiful. So, Section 3 philosophy. What do we actually do at Halad? So basically the way that our course is designed is very similar to Section 1. We're really focused on helping you improve skills to tackle Section 3. The group sizes are quite small, so it allows students to sort of receive individual attention from the tutors. And there's a lot of group-led discussion because we really believe that students don't just learn from tutors, they learn from each other as well. So that's incorporated quite a lot into our course structure. And it's really designed for students who are motivated to improve their scores. We really want to help you guys build your skills so that when you sit the Gamsat, you're going to get a really good score that you're happy with. In terms of what each class actually contains, so each week will consist of a key text type. So for example, the first week might be graphs. You also get diagrams, tables, reactions, equations, as well as a few other texts. So we'll really tackle this text type. We'll get into exactly how to dissect it and how to analyze these kinds of texts. We'll also discuss the key skills involved in being able to analyze these texts. And how to improve those skills as well. So we don't want to just give you the skills, but we also want to teach you how to apply them and how to improve them so that you can practice in your own time. We'll give you examples of how to analyze text types, and we also do lots of activities focused on improving those key skills, as well as supplementing with Gamsat style question and discussing. Okay, in terms of what we're doing today, it's a little bit different from the way we run our intensives, but it's structured in a similar manner. So basically what we're doing is I'll give you guys a chance to actually do a Gamsat style question. I'll give you about 5 minutes per question, maybe a little bit less. And then we'll come back together as a group and discuss the key skills involved in answering that question. Okay, got some things in the chat. Oh, I think we're all good. All right, beautiful. So hopefully
sorry.
you guys can find this. Yep.
There's just one question in the chat for you.
Oh, is there? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me have a look. I might have missed it.
I think it only just came in.
Oh, it's right there at the bottom. Okay. Section 3 questions seem to be the same as the most recent mini mock. Just wondering if there are any questions to go through today. Yes, they are. Yeah. So we're going through the same questions, but we're just dissecting a little bit further into how to think about those question types. Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, it was a really difficult question, which is why we decided to go through it again, take a little bit more time and sort of dissect the question, how you might approach it. Okay, but what I'll do, I'll start a timer. So you guys have about 5 minutes to attempt the first question. So take your time, think through the problem, and then we'll have a bit of discussion. So your time starts now. Okay, guys, so you have about a minute left to attempt that question. Think about what your answer is. Also, just to clarify, it's only for the first question that we're doing. We'll go through the other ones in a sec. Okay, so that's time. So what I'll do is I'll start a little poll. Let's see. Okay. All right, so what do you guys think it is? A, B, C, or D? All right, we've got about 13 of you that have answered. So pump up those numbers. Just have a guess, even if you don't know. All right, we're about halfway. It's got a few more people. All right, we've got a very tight race here. Does anyone else want to put in their answer? Got 10 more seconds. All right, I'll end it there. So, can I share this? Yeah, I can. All right. Cool. So very even tie between A, B, and C. I wonder why no one put D. Is it because it's 3.2 meters? Like, seems like too much, doesn't it? I like it. All right, cool. Let's go through the working out. So you guys have guessed A. So the key skill with this question is being able to narrow down information. So I'm sure you guys noticed with that unit, you were presented with quite a lot of information. You had about 3 formulas, I believe. You had a diagram as well that you had to dissect. There were a lot of variables to work with. And there was a little bit of information in the STEM as well. So there's quite a lot. And it can be really tricky when you're faced with a large STEM in section 3 to be able to find, well, what is the relevant information you need to use for that particular question? And so a really important skill we want you guys to focus on is being able to identify what the relevant information is. Why is that important, you might ask? Well, because when you're a doctor, you're going to be presented with a large quantity of information and you need to be able to narrow down on what you think is the most important. So it's a really, really useful skill as a doctor. So for this particular question, the relevant piece of information you needed to narrow down on is this formula here, V equals AD. So I'll show you guys why. So what we're really interested in from the question is how much does this lever arm move? So how much does A2 move up when A1 is pushed down? What you need to note is that the volume remains constant. There is no change in the volume in this hydraulic lever. So that remains constant. So what we can do is we can use a ratio between the areas to find the answer. And that's really hinted at in the final part of the first STEM, So the output force F out may be greater than F in depending on the area ratio of the two piston arms, right? So you've got to narrow down on what the most useful information is in the STEM and then use that to answer the question. So going back to this question, what we can say is that on the left-hand side at A1, V equals AD, and on the right-hand side at A2, got the same formula, V equals AD. And that's the only formula we'll need to use. We just need to use the ratio between the areas of A1 and A2. Now we know that the diameter of A1 is 4 times smaller than the diameter of A2. We can even see that in the image, right? And because diameter is a length, then the area must be 4 squared, so 16 times bigger in A2. You can see that sort of illustrated in this diagram here. So if the length ratio is B on A, then when the area grows, the ratio grows by factor squared. Okay, so that's an important rule to keep in mind. And in terms of the volume ratio, it grows by factor cubed. Okay, so in this case, it's 16 times bigger, which is 4 squared. So V is AD and V is constant, then if A increases 16-fold, D must decrease 16-fold. Okay, so think about that as the formula. If A increases 16 times, D must decrease 16 times, right? Because V remains constant. So by that logic, if A1 moves up 20 centimeters, then A2 must move up 20 centimeters divided by 16, which comes closest to 1.25 centimeters, or that's what it's equal to, which is 0.0125 meters. So that's closest to the correct answer of 0.01. So the correct answer is A, if that's what you chose. Beautiful, I hope that made sense. That's the first question. On to the second question. So I give you guys a little bit less time because you've already read the STEM. So I give you about 2 minutes to do this question, and then we'll do some discussion. All right, guys, so about 30 seconds left. So have a think about it, try to pick an answer. All right, beautiful, so that's time. So let me launch a poll again. I believe, nope, not that one. Okay, so hopefully you guys should be able to see that. So what do you think, A, B, C, or D? All right, yes, the numbers are going up very quickly this time. I feel like you guys are more prepared. All right, I'll give you about 10 more seconds. So put in your final answers. Okay. So very close between B and D this time. A and C did get a mention, but really B and D is what we're looking at. And I really like where you guys are going, 62% going towards B. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. All right. So the key skill this time is something we like to call contextualization. So really thinking about the information that you're presented in the context in which it's applied, really trying to put the information into things that make sense for you. I love to use analogies, for example, things that will make the question click, okay? So in the Gamsat, this skill really allows you to think very intuitively about a problem. Instead of thinking abstractly about something that might not make much sense, you're thinking intuitively about a problem in the real world. And it's really useful skill because all of the science that you're presented with in the Gamsat, maybe you haven't come across it before, but it's all related to real world application. So why is this important? Well, when you're presented with information about your patient as a doctor, you need to take them in the context of the patient's disease or their presentation, right? So it's a really useful skill as a doctor not to ignore the context in which information is presented. And I've got a lovely little diagram here in which context is very important for interpretation and understanding. So here's the working out. So let's think about it. In scenario one, we've got a liquid, it's incompressible. So that means when I push the liquid doesn't compress. It sort of keeps the same volume, right? The gas is compressible. So that means if I push on the gas, it will go into a smaller volume, right? Now, some of you might know the gas law formula. We won't go into that. I want you guys to just purely think about this problem in an intuitive manner rather than thinking about formulas. So the main takeaway is that gas is compressible. So as the gases compress, what they do is they absorb the force that's used to compress them. So the end result, right, is that the spring will move less because the gas must be compressed first, okay? So the example that I want to give, the analogy that I want to give is that if you think about trying to push a heavy object using a large balloon, okay? You wouldn't expect the object to move until the balloon had been compressed enough, right? So it's the exact same thing with a spring. You need the gas to compress enough for it to cause an effect onto the spring moving. So essentially what the gas is doing is that it's absorbing the force. So in this case, the answer is B. Any questions in the chat? Yeah, section 3 is definitely very tiring. Sorry if anyone feels like they're falling asleep. Okay, that looks all good. So last question, last thing you guys have to think through. We might do this one individually as well. So I'll give you guys a little bit longer. I'll give you about 3 minutes to think about it. So your time starts now, and then we'll come back and discuss. Right, everyone, about 20 more seconds. Just think about what your final answer would be. Okay, we had a question from a student, which was, why is the answer for question 2 not D? So let's go back and have a look at that. Okay, so the extent of the spring compression depends on the density of the gas. So to answer that question, you have to talk about the gas law formula, which I can write out. So I'll annotate the screen. Hopefully you guys can see that. So you've got PV equals nRT. You guys, some of you might have seen this formula before. It relates to gases. P is pressure, V is volume, N is number of moles, R is a constant, T is temperature. Okay. So the extent of the spring depends on the density of the gas. Now, to think about what really matters here, right? What really matters is the volume. Okay, so the volume that the gas takes up, right? Now, the volume that the gas takes up is not really very dependent on the density, right? At this point, all it depends on is the number of moles, the temperature, and the pressure, okay? So ignore pressure for now. The thing that really matters in this particular question is the number of moles of the gas. That will determine how much volume the gas takes up, and therefore how much the total load moves, right? So based on the information from the graph, you could probably rule that out purely because you haven't had any information about the density. But to really come up with a reason why the density doesn't matter, you have to have a look at this particular formula, which is not given to you, so you don't have to think about it. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. But going back to question number 3, we'll do another poll. So poll time, loving these polls. Honestly, my favorite thing about today has been doing these polls. Here we go, relaunch. Okay, so A, B, C, or D? All right, we have about 15 of you voted. So keep putting in answers. Even if you haven't answered the question, even if you haven't worked it out, just try and guess something. What do you feel is right? What are you vibing? Right, I just literally just want one more person to answer because right now we have a tie between 2 options. Okay, here we go. Beautiful. I'll give you guys about 5 more seconds. Okay, we'll end it there. That was really just a bit of a tie that I wanted to get rid of. So it was very, very close between C and D. We had a few people go for A and B as well. So this was definitely a more tricky question, I would say. Oh, let's share the results. I haven't shared that. So yeah, C and D was very, very close. A and B, some people went for. But yeah, let's go through the answer on what we think it might be. Okay, so the real key skill for this particular question is being able to extract variables from a stem. Oftentimes in the Gamsat, you'll get multiple equations that need you to figure out something, but they've only given you like one piece of equation and you're like, I don't know how that relates to everything else. So what you need to do is figure out what do you need and how can you get to it, right? So we have a little bit of a step-by-step plan of how you might be able to do that. So really just find the variables, label them, figure out what they mean, determine which equation you need to use based on the information that you're given. So what variables do you know? What variables do you need to figure out? And if there's two variables that you don't know, then you need to use two formulas. If there's three variables you don't know, you might need to use three formulas, and so on. Okay, so that's just a step-by-step sort of guide, but that's very, very general. For this particular example, what we really need is the change in X. So how much does the spring get compressed? What is this distance, right? And to get to it, what we're going to use is this formula, right? Because the link between these two formulas is F, okay? So I need X, I have K, so I just need to find F, right? So this is how you might do it. So first we need to calculate what the force being applied is. So C is a 10 kilogram container. So we use force equals mass times acceleration. Mass is 10 kilograms. Acceleration is 10 meters per second due to gravity. So you have 10 times 10, it's 100 newtons. So now we use the first formula, right? We know that the pressure remains constant. That's been a really important part of this stem. The pressure remains constant and the volume remains constant, okay? But the pressure you're exerting throughout is constant on all the surfaces, right? You can change the pressure, but what you're doing is that the pressure just remains constant throughout the entire, throughout this entire volume, okay? So if the force one that you're putting in is 100, then the force, oh, there's a bit of a, yeah, if the force that you're putting in is 100, and you know that area 2 is 16 times bigger than area 1 from the previous question, then we can also say that the force 2 is 16 times bigger than force 1. So the output force is 1600 newtons, okay? But we're not done yet. We still need to figure out what the change in X is. So we plug F2 into our second equation. So using our second formula, the change in X is F2 divided by K. We know that K is 100. So our final answer, just a little bit of math, 1600 divided by 100 to give 16 meters, okay? There's a little bit of a hint in the stem, which is that the output force may be greater than the input force depending on the area ratio of the two piston arms. So that really tells you that this is the formula that you need to use to figure out what the output force is. The ratio between these two, right, is 1 to 16, then the force coming out of this area must be 16 times greater. And that's really the whole point of this particular lever arm, is that you'll be able to lift something much heavier, right? So think about like a car jack, like lifting up a car, right? You only need to put in a small amount of force somewhere else to be able to lift up the car, okay? And so the correct answer is D for that one. So for those of you who guessed D, well done. And that's it, you pretty much finished. So section 3, I'll give you about 1 minute just to reflect on how you went. Think about what you were good at, what did you struggle with, what are you hoping to improve in the future? Okay, we might have a few questions. The polls are better than American politics. Bit of a silly question, but where do we get A equals 10 meters from? Okay, not a silly question at all. It depends on the Gamsat question. I think honestly in the real Gamsat, you'll probably get the 9.8. They'll tell you that gravity is equal to 9.8. And we normally just round that up from 10. So 9.8, we usually just round that up to 10. Flick back to the last slide quickly. Yep, no problem. Okay. There's that timer. All right, so hopefully you've had a chance to do some reflection. Okay, I'm gonna flip on to the next thing. That's it, you're all done. So type one thing in the chat that you learned from the class. I'm gonna pass it on back to Sarah. Also, don't forget that you can email any of us. Those are our emails there. Very easy, Karim, Gabby, Sarah at haladtohealth.org. Feel free to reach out. We won't bite, honestly. Yeah, if you have any questions at all, we're more than happy to help. Yeah, back to you, Sarah.
Woohoo! Thank you so much, Gabby and Karim, for joining me this evening and for making this class so amazing. What I would love you all to do, as Karim has just mentioned, is to write down either something that you learned or a goal that you have going forward to help with your Gamsat preparation. Maybe something you learned tonight or something that you reflected on. I love reading these, so would absolutely love that. Also, I'm just going to put in the chat a form. We would really appreciate if you could fill it out and give us some feedback, especially because this is the first time we've run a class exactly like this. And so we'd love to hear what you thought and just, yeah, get a bit of insight into what the experience was like for you. In terms of where to from here, if you would like to join our Facebook community, we would absolutely love to see you there, and we keep it up to date with all of our resources. We put a lot of things there that you can have a go with. And in terms of that as well, if you want to keep up to date with future events that we're running, more events like this, or if you have ideas for events, please put it in the feedback form for us, and they'll all be on this Halad calendar that you can check out as well. And just a reminder that our intensives start next week. If you would still like to sign up, they're still open and available. We still have some classes available for each section. They run very similar to what we ran tonight, but 2 hours for each class each week, and you'll do that for 6 weeks. So if you enjoyed tonight's class, then that's a really good taster of what we'll be going through and the kind of style and content and the depth that we'll go through in those classes. And so just to show you all that we do still have some classes available to sign up. So head over to our page for that. But also if you have any questions about if any classes are available or would like to fit in, then email Carleen. It's the same as our emails, but just Carleen's name. And I'll put it in the chat as well. And yes, I've been asked by Eliza to tell everyone about the induction roast, which is happening on Monday. If you've signed up for intensives, come along and come and meet your tutors. And in true Halad fashion, we'll basically be meeting them by dissing them. So come along and hear all of the lame as stories about the Halad tutors, and also ask your questions, and be ready to go for classes to start next week, which we are so excited for. And just to finish up, we would love to remind you of what Halad is all about. And if you would love to come along to one of our missions, then you can also express your interest and come along to those. So thank you so much for joining in. Love seeing this, that you learnt narrowing down your options, learning about, lost my chat. Learning about that there are many things to learn, but that it was really helpful. So happy to hear that. And I will finish off just with Eliza's going to share a quick video while you fill out the feedback form. Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming. And please send us an email or just shout out on our Facebook if you have any questions at all. And we hope to see a lot of you in our courses soon. I know a lot of you have signed up. So thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.